Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to Senator Gianaris, Senator Krueger, Senator Lanza, and Senator Stewart-Cousins. Been thinking a lot throughout the morning, and I was talking with Senator Lanza before we came in. You know, there were times I would come up here on a Sunday night and come over to the Capitol, and there was a tranquility and a serenity, in part because it was night and no one was really here. And I got a chance to walk around and reflect, truly reflect, on how magnificent this building is and this place. So today, there's a calmness, but it's not serene. And it's not really tranquil. And I live my life as a very positive person. So I come in here today with my colleagues with an open heart, but a heavy heart. And I just think about how incredibly important the work that we do is. So I want to say thank you at large for the opportunity to be part of this august body. I want to say thank you to everyone who's here, properly spaced I might add, but we are doing the people's business. So I say thank you to everyone, God bless all of you, and that includes every single person who is in and around the halls of this chamber and this Capitol. Because this place still has to operate. And thank God we have the people that we do to take care of us. But you know what? This is about the human experience. And however one approaches their life and seeks good in others and for others, I would, from the bottom of my heart, ask that people find time to contemplate and to think well of Senator Jim Seward. Senator Seward tested positive. So did his wife. And he's having a tough time. So when I think of him, I think of our colleagues who've had the same type of issue in the Assembly. And no matter what our differences are, part of the insanity of this place is that it becomes like a family. It just does. Mr. President, I look at you and I think of your little girl. I look at Senator Lanza, I think of his 3 children and how we talk about that all the time. And then I think of my own family. And I think about how anxious they are and the fear that they have, real fear. The nervousness, the anxiety, when less than a month ago, people were starting to pay attention, but nowhere near the way they are now. I look at my colleague and friend, Senator Gianaris. A couple of weeks ago, he and I had a debate. We banged elbows a little bit on a debate, and the world has radically changed just in those few weeks. Radically changed. And nowhere has it changed more significantly than in the state of New York. I have been blessed to have 3 children. And my daughter, who is the apple of my eye, is an actress. So I pay attention to some music, Broadway shows, can't wait for them to open back up. And there's a song from a play called Rent, Seasons of Love. It talks about 525,600 minutes. And that's the number of minutes in a year. 525,600 minutes. It's a fabulous song. So how do you measure a year? In daylight, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter, and strife. And now we measure it in life and death in a way that I don't think any one of us could have predicted. I look at our majority leader, She's trying to do everything humanly possible within her power to do the right thing. And yet the scope of what she's looking at is unalterably changed from St. Patrick's Day forward. So now I think of a wide variety of groups: our first responders, our EMT, our police, our doctors, our nurses, our volunteers. People drop everything. And one of my hospital CEOs gave me a good description talking about nurses in particular. They're like, yeah, they run it. They don't walk it. They run it. And thank God we have people that do that. We are all immeasurably blessed because of that. And I think of basic things too. We're all eating. You know, we all get to go to the food store and things like that. Somebody's out there doing the work so that we can do our jobs. And yet people are walking around nervous. And it's understandable. In terms of our colleagues, Senator Stewart Cousins and I had spoken, and this is not a time for debate. And certainly we're not engaging in a debate, but I was dubious as to whether or not I should even get up and speak. Because arguably we're talking not to an empty chamber per se, but this will be memorialized in the record and the transcript of the New York State Senate. And my colleagues, out of deference to the process and to the leader and to the majority, we didn't engage in debate. Maybe a really little bit. But in reality, I'm standing before you as a representative of our conference. So when I see our new colleague, Senator Borrello, get up and offer heartfelt comments, I know where he's coming from. When I hear Senator Amador talk about what it means to be a business person, I understand where he's coming from. And I could speak to every single person in our conference as to their qualities, as to their temperament, as to their disposition, and to the gut-wrenching feeling that each and every one of us have. I know I feel. I know I should be here, but oh man, I am like jonesing to be home. And I also know I have to be incredibly careful when I get that opportunity to go home. Senator Gianaris and I were talking about our mothers, right? Senator Lanza, we were talking about his father. You want to go and knock on that door, run and give that big hug? You can't do it. So we have to do it metaphorically. We have to find some way to continue the human existence and make people feel good about where we are. Yesterday, we got the daily update. And Morgan, who works right here, has helped us out. There were roughly 83,000 cases yesterday. Now there's over 92,000. Yesterday, there were 1,941 deaths in the state of New York. This morning's report was 2,373. 24 hours. That's the difference we've seen. So when we get involved in the discussions on this budget, I want to make a few brief comments as to approach. I respect very deeply the work of my colleagues in the majority and their efforts to bring forth the blueprint for New York as they see it, working with the Assembly and working with the governor. Our conference would have taken a slightly different tact. I think we would have been more focused on let's handle what is before us, the public health crisis, the pandemic, and lead of a lot of other things that are worthy of consideration, but at a different time and under different circumstances. Simple things. Public financing and campaigns. I don't think the public is worried about that right now. I really don't. Banning polystyrene may be a laudable goal, but frankly, that's the stuff that everyone's using to get takeout food right now. Things like that. I actually have been a strong supporter of prevailing wage for working men and women. I just don't know that or think that this is the right time given the gravity of what we're facing in our economy. Two other quick things. There's a bond act that's in this budget. And I've always been a pretty strong supporter of bond acts for this reason, because the public decides. In my opinion, and a lot of the opinion of my colleagues, now is not the time. I don't know how we can go out and ask somebody to support an environmental bond act when unemployment claims are rising at a meteoric pace. And even legislation on sick leave or bail, whatever it may be, but sick leave in particular, changing significantly a law where people are more worried about their jobs as opposed to whether or not they're going to have the appropriate sick leave. But as I said, we want to get into the rough and tumble on that. We just don't think the time is now. And we do have to pass our budget, and we do have to meet our obligations. We just think it should have been done in a different way. And I respect the fact that the majority will take a different act and take a different approach, and that's why they're in the majority. And they have that right and prerogative. So now, too, I'm thinking about the governor and the federal government. When I looked at what was in this budget, I picked out one thing. There's over $1 billion in funding for education. There's about $800 million in higher education. There's $25 billion in authority for things that may come. But the thing that I saw that my constituents are going to want to know about, and they're going to want to thank the federal government, the President, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, all of our delegation from New York, they're not only going to want to thank them for that additional unemployment benefit, they're going to want to thank them for that check that otherwise would not have come. But they're also going to want to thank them for almost, and I want to repeat this number, almost $40 billion in relation to unemployment insurance. So when the Department of Labor gets 50,000 calls a week, and last week they got over 8 million inquiries, that shows you what people are focusing on. That shows you where people's heads are at. So when I go home, I don't really want to talk about polystyrene. I want to be able to say to somebody, you know what, the Department of Labor, they took a huge shift and brought in 1,500 new people, whatever the number may be, to process your claim, to make sure your family is well taken care of. And with all the things the governor has done, I have to say, I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen something much more forthright in that area. It'll probably come. Maybe it'll come after this debate and maybe after this conversation. But we're at a time where I think that's what people are really looking at. Now, having just said what I did, I want to be clear, I said it before, the governor deserves tremendous praise for his yeoman-like efforts 24 hours a day on behalf of everyone in the state of New York. The calm, the repose, the occasional humor, and making people feel better, trying to make people feel better, giving them a sense of purpose, giving them a sense of hope, showing them accomplishments, showing how many more people have gotten tested, showing how many more people are getting better. Those are all good signs. And you all know we're not even close. We're not even close to being finished. But, as I said before, I live my life as a very positive person. We are absolutely going to get through this. Absolutely. And it's because we know how to stick together. We'll have our differences, but we know how to stick together. I want to support Senator Stewart Cousins in those types of efforts. I want to support my colleagues because it's good for the people that we represent. Our obligation is fundamental, it's basic, but it's strong too. And there are two people who are not here that I want to just speak to very briefly because I think they are characteristic of every member in this House. Senator LaValle sits right there, 44 years in the Senate, the Dean of the Senate. I looked at his chair the other day, it's got tattered edges. That's based on his longevity. Senator Montgomery is not here today, but she's the Dean of your conference and the longest serving member in your conference. They represent what is good about every member in this chamber. Their longevity, their service, their passion, their dedication, and their devotion, and God knows they will be missed. And it's kind of weird because Senator Borrello came in, right? Newest member. If anyone had ever said, this is what your first budget's going to be like, he probably wouldn't have signed his oath of office. But he's here. And I've never seen anything like this. And I never thought, my God, today, being the closure of the budget, that every one of us, this may be our last day here for session. I mean, I hope not. I don't. But if that's what it is, that's what it is. But I know we're meeting our obligation today. So as I said, with humility and respect, we would have taken a different tack. I know there's good things in here to help people. I'm not going to dismiss that. But there are things that should have been debated outside of the budget. And there will be time for those things. So, again, I am honored and privileged to be standing here. The fact that anyone would take the time to listen to my comments makes me a very grateful person. And as I said, I feel like I am being representative of the people of the Senate Republican Conference. So I kind of said this at the beginning. This is about being a human being, trying to be a good person. As we pray for the people that we read about, I would ask again, in sincerity, please think of Jim Seward. I can't think of a finer public servant. And my heart breaks as I speak about him because there's tens of thousands of Jim Sewards in New York at this very moment who need our love, our service, our devotion, our prayers, and our support. I thank the governor, I thank the majority leader, and all of my colleagues for the work that they do. Mr. President, you're a good man, and it's been a pleasure to watch you serve up there. God bless this chamber, God bless the New York State Senate, the great Empire State of New York, and the United States of America. Thank you.